Hey guys, welcome back to this lecture implementing basic auth in Prometheus. So in this lecture we will actually implement the basic authentication and we will see how it works. Okay, so you can see on my screen currently I'm in my Linux machine where we were running the Prometheus containers and where we have tested the source code installation. So in this lecture I will show you both the cases so as to make you understand that easily and how it works. Okay, so we will start with the source code installation first. In the source code installation we already had a pre-compiled library for Prometheus and we were simply passing the configuration file to the Prometheus process or Prometheus binary to run it along with. So that's the same mechanism or same step we will use here, but here additionally we will pass a web config file so that it implements the authentication. Okay, so now let us go to the binary where we have downloaded the Prometheus. So this was my extracted version where I had this Prometheus binary which represents the Prometheus server basically, and this is my YAML file for Prometheus. Now what I need is I need a web config file which contains the username and the hashed password, or I say bcrypt hashed password for your user, and that username and the decrypted password will be used whenever you will access the Prometheus console. Okay, so now it's time that we create a web config.yaml file. As I already said, Linux does not concerns about naming convention. Name could be anything. The only thing that matters is the content inside your file. Okay, so here in web config file it basically expects you to pass the username and the bcrypt hashed password. Okay, now you'll say what is bcrypt hashed password and how we create it. Then I'll show you that first. Now let's suppose you have any user, let's say admin user, and now you want to create a user account for that and you want to create a bcrypt hash password for that admin user. So there is one command that can be done by multiple ways, and one of them is htpassword command. We can use the htpassword command which comes along with the http utils. Okay, and that can help us to generate such a password. So I will run that command here and I'll explain you how it works. So this is the command where it is saying, okay, please generate a bcrypt hash password. This b flag here basically represents the bcrypt. Okay, and here 10 is basically the cost. So whatever, so it basically represents how much time your algorithm takes to hash the password. Okay, so this value lies between 7 to 17 or 18. So what higher the cost, higher the time it takes to hash the password. Okay, and in the front as you can see tr-d, so we are using it to basically delete the new line character from the output that is coming out of this particular command. Okay, so I will enter it and now it will ask you the password. Okay, for which password you want to generate a bcrypt hash. So I'll give in password here in my human readable form, let's say test123 or whatever it could be. So I will keep it as test@123. I will repeat it, test@123. All are in capital I have used. So this is the bcrypt hash it has created for me. Okay, I'll copy it and we'll keep it for the later reference. Now it's time to create the web config file. So what I'll do, I will create a file here named view web-config.yaml. I will enter it. Now I will insert the content here and it should be in the form of this. So I'll copy paste here so as to save us some time. So this should be like this. So this basically represents the list of auth users which are supposed to be authenticated. So only these users which we are representing in this or which we are specifying in this file will only be granted the permission to access the Prometheus console. Okay, so this is a sample password. Let me replace it with the latest one which we have created. So I will use it and bring it here. Okay, so I've created my web config file here. please note, this is basic auth users. You must have to specify it, and under this particular label you will specify the username and passwords. Okay, so I'll save it here. Now it's time we run the Prometheus file or Prometheus instance, and we pass these configuration files along with. So what I'll do, as you know from the previous lecture, I will use /Prometheus. First of all, I will use config.file to pass my Prometheus YAML file, and then I will use web.config.file equals to, here I'll pass webconfig.yaml. So I passed both the files here. Now let us run it and let's see if it works. Okay, so my Prometheus has started. Now it's time to test whether my authentication has been implemented or not. So what I'll do, I'll copy it and I will try in the new incognito mode so that it does not pick the last page from the cache. In that case, it will not ask you for the authentication. Okay, great. So as you can see it here, now as soon as I enter it, it asks me for the username and password. Now here I pass my username and password, which I created, test@123 in capital. I'll sign in. Okay. Now it has allowed me. Now if I pass the wrong password here, 9090, and if I give it any, so it will not let me go further. Okay, so that proves we have implemented the basic auth successfully in the source code installation. Now it's time, how do we implement it in container? Now guys, we need to understand one thing here is that if you remember from the last lecture, we were using the pre-built images from the Docker Hub. The image name was prom/Prometheus. Okay, now that particular Prometheus image was built in a way that Prometheus process only takes the Prometheus configuration file as an config parameter or command line flag in the command line flag, and it only reads the configuration file for that. It does not considers the web config YAML file while running the Prometheus process. So what now we need to do is we need to create a custom image based out of earlier image, and then we will be using that image to run our web config file along with the Prometheus process. So we will implement that now. Now for that, let us go inside the mnt directory and let us create a directory here where we will create the Docker file for our Docker container, and we will create a custom image based out of our existing image. So what I will do, first of all, I will create a directory here so that all the related content we will keep it inside that. Okay, now here I will create a Docker file. Okay, now in the Docker file, what we will do, we will use same Prometheus image. Here I will use the latest tag. Okay, now I will pass these commands in the Docker file, which makes it to consider these command line arguments or command line flags to run whenever this Prometheus container comes up. Okay, prometheus.yaml, and again next I'll pass web.config.file/etc/prometheus web-config.yaml. Okay, and I will expose 1990 port here. What I have done, I have created a Docker file. I'm saying whenever this container will come up, it will run these two commands along with the Prometheus binary. Okay, so these two command line flags will be passed to that Prometheus binary, and then the container will come up. So basically the process which will run for Prometheus, that will consist of these two command line flags. Okay, so now we have passed both the config and web config file here. What we will do, we will create a new Docker image out of this Docker file, and the command for that is docker build -t. I can keep it like custom Prometheus. Okay, I'm not specifying the tag. By default it will make it as latest, and I'm specifying dot here. Dot basically says it to look for Docker file in the current working directory. So I enter it. Okay, my image is successfully created with this name. Now I'll go inside the Docker images. I can see it here, custom Prometheus. Okay, so the next step is to run a container out of it. Okay, so what we will do now, we will use the docker run command here. Now guys, if you remember in our last lecture, in our previous lecture, when we were running the Docker container for Prometheus, what we were doing, we were mounting the Prometheus YAML file with the existing YAML file in my EC2 machine. Okay, but now what I'll do, rather than mounting a particular specific file, I will mount the entire directory inside the container to the directory in my EC2 instance. So now if you'll see it here, this is my container path etc Prometheus. What I am doing, I am mounting this path onto mnt/prometheus, our current working directory of EC2 instance. Okay, so what it will do, it will so my this particular directory Prometheus mnt/prometheus will override the /etc/prometheus directory here. Okay, so let us run it. Whoa, it is getting me an error. It is saying error loading config etc prometheus.yaml. Now what this error is saying, that my container is not able to find the prometheus.yaml file, and that is because if I look at my mnt prometheus directory, this is my directory. Inside this directory I only have docker file. I do not have prometheus.yaml file, which overrides my container path or container prometheus.yaml file. So what I need to do is, I need to bring the Prometheus YAML file from one level up directory to here. Okay, now I have the Prometheus YAML file. The next thing I need is web config file here, because my container is also expecting the web config file in this directory in etc Prometheus. Okay, so what I will do, I will go to root Prometheus, and then this is the place where we have created the web config file. I'll copy it here. Okay, now I have all three files here. Now I will again run the container. Okay, so now it should get both the configuration file, prometheus.yaml and web config YAML. Let us run it. Okay, great, my Prometheus server has started fine. It is listening on 9090. Now it's time we validate it. We will go to a new cognitive window. I will port number. Okay, that's great. It is asking me for the password. I'll give it as I've used earlier while encrypting or hashing the password, and it has allowed me to pass or to access the Prometheus console. So we have successfully implemented the authentication, or we say basic auth in Prometheus in the container as well now. So now again I will repeat. So what we have done, we have created the docker file because we needed a custom image out of the basic image we downloaded from the Docker Hub, and in the image we have passed these two commands, config file and web config file, and the path we have given as inside etc prometheus.yaml and etc prometheus web config.yaml, and this etc prometheus, this is the directory inside the container, so we need to remember that. Okay, once we will create the image will be created out of it using docker build command, and then from that image we will run a container using docker run command, which is this. Now if you will know, so my container was expecting prometheus.yaml on webconfig.yaml file inside this etc prometheus directory, so we need to pass it from the volume where we have mounted it. Okay, so what we have done after that, we have placed the files here, prometheus.yaml and webconfig.yaml, which will override the container's path. Okay, and then we have started the container and it has started fine. So this was about this lecture. I hope that you will be able to understand and you were getting the concept of basic auth. So I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.